Welcome back to another episode of the Nic Cage Fight podcast, where we scout out a list of movies to watch, plan an elaborate heist, and execute it to perfection so we can explain it to you in sometimes excruciating detail. We do this because our brother botched a podcast, and if we don't do it right, the new gangster in town will kill him. I am one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by Rich and Ryan. How are we today?
I have no idea how you get through those in one take. I am not even lying. You have never fudged one. It's always been one take. I would start laughing like in the middle of it.
And I'm Fast and Furious. Oh, wait, wrong movie.
Well, it's close enough.
Same movie.
I watched that movie in preparation for this as well. I have watched three movies.
I did not watch Fast and the Furious. I was thinking about it, but it got a little late last night by the time second Gone in 60 Seconds had wrapped.
I watched it. Not as many similarities as you think or as I thought. The first Fast and Furious is actually quite a banger. I mean, they're all bangers in their own way, especially like when they became self-aware. But the first one, where they're kind of still playing everything straight, is like not a bad flick. It's not quite as fun as this movie, but it's a better movie, I would say.
That's kind of what I remember. I remember this one having its tongue firmly in cheek for most of its runtime, and Fast and the Furious playing it a bit more straight.
Yes.
So we're obviously here today to talk about Gone in 60 Seconds, a 2000 film that was rated PG-13 and clocks in at an hour and 58 minutes. I say we jump right into housekeeping because
let's do it.
This is one of our more star-studded housekeeping segments.
We got a beautiful ensemble cast here.
We really do. So start us off with the director, Dominic Sena, who did Whiteout, Swordfish, Season of the Witch, another Nic Cage movie that we have not gotten to yet. And, also has a lot of credits as a cinematographer, which I think showed through at a couple of points in the film. I expected it to be a little bit more obvious, but it was fine.
He also directed a movie I appreciate, but not a lot of people do, California, where you got Mulder from the X-Files as a serial killer.
Huh.
Yeah, pretty damn good David Duchovny performance in that.
I'll have to check that out. That actually sounds really up my alley.
Things with the name California in it. Okay.
Oh yeah, but this one's spelled with a K.
Still counts.
I don't know why.
Because he's a killer.
I might be misremembering that. He might be running from a serial killer. I know it's the serial killer flick and he's in it.
Okay, well, there's still a serial killer involved. Maybe that's why they went with the K for California. As far as writers are concerned, H.B. Halicki,
yeah,
original writer.
He was the original writer, so they gave him the credit because they're adapting the 1974 Gone in 60 Seconds.
Exactly. So a little nod to the writer of the original screenplay. But this one was helmed by Scott Rosenberg. Now, Scott Rosenberg has a very interesting list of movies that they've written, including Kangaroo Jack, the Venom movie, the first Venom movie. I'm not sure if he was involved in the writing of the second one. I didn't notice that.
Doesn't look like it.
The two new Jumanji movies, which is Welcome to the Jungle and The Next Level. Not sure what order because I did not watch those. And most importantly, this is the person who wrote Con Air, one of the Holy Trinity Nic Cage films. So I was expecting a lot going into this.
And he's got three other credits that I'm going to shout out real quick because I love all three of these movies.
I know two of them.
High Fidelity.
Yep.
Disturbing Behavior.
Yep.
And Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, which is a deeply underrated film.
So unlike some other films we've covered, I'm feeling very excited having seen who directed and who wrote this. And I always do these segments before I watch the movie, which helps me understand what to expect from the director and writer and does me no good as far as cast and remembering their names, because it takes like a solid 45 minutes for any of that to settle in.
Real quick, he also was the script doctor for the original Spider-Man.
Oh, the Sam Raimi one?
Yeah.
Oh, neat. I can see that. They both have that snappy back and forth to the dialogue.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to shout that out too. That this dude is he's swinging for the fences on a lot of movies.
Yeah. No, I mean, hey, I didn't really have an issue with the writing on this one, although I am going to clown on it a bit when we get to certain parts.
Now I know
But
you usually don't do this, but I do want to shout out the cinematographer. What's his name? Paul Cameron, who worked on two great movies, Collateral and Man on Fire.
I really like both of those movies. I'm a glutton for like not those two aren't exactly mindless action movies, but those like dark action films, I love them. With like
Neo
a
noir is what I'd tag it at, and you get a lot of that in like the lighting and shot framing in this as well.
oh yeah, absolutely. But I gotta wonder if it was kind of a nightmare for the cinematographer on this film working under a director who's primarily a cinematographer.
My understanding is that it's usually easier. I know
Okay.
Scorsese worked as a cinematographer on some of his early films before he had a dedicated DP, but seemed like he sort of flourished after he had a dedicated guy because he had that base knowledge that he could figure out exactly what he wanted out of a scene.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I work in a very different profession. If I had a boss who had made their bones doing my particular job, I think I would just be annoyed more often than not. But moving on to the cast, we have Nic Cage as Memphis Reigns, a man who needs no introduction, but we introduce him first every time out of respect. Up next, we have Angelina Jolie as Sarah Sway Whalen, which it just occurs to me why her nickname's Sway. Who you might recognize because they only ever refer to her as Sway. I'm fairly
Mhm.
certain, and
Yeah, I
so
didn't know she had a name. I thought it was
yeah,
just Sway.
who people will recognize from a number of films, but Girl Interrupted, Maleficent, the live action movie, Changeling, and the Laura Croft Tomb Raider films. Also Wanted. I mean, we just sit here and name Angelina Jolie movies,
Yeah,
but
she's
you
been
know
in
who she
everything.
is. Then we have Giovanni
Ribisi.
Ribisi as Kip Brains, who was in Avatar, The Gift, Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, and Ted as the creepy dad of the kid who gets Ted at some point, if I
If you
remember
want to
correctly.
see something where you can actually really see his acting chops, he plays Joe Colombo in The Offer, which is the miniseries about the making of The Godfather.
Oh,
And
that's
he's
interesting. I didn't even know that existed.
yeah, it's on Paramount Plus. I've okay, so here's the thing. It's not very good, but it is directly up my alley. So
Hmm.
I've seen it like 9 times.
Oh, I do also have to clarify something real quick. He was in the 2000 film The Gift, not the 2015 film The Gift, because I was like, I really like that movie. I don't remember him in it at all. And that's because it is a totally different The Gift that he was in.
He's also randomly in one of those episodes of the '80s remake of The Twilight Zone,
Oh, there you go.
which we have had another person who was on one of those previously on an episode,
We
and
have.
he's in Lost Highway, my favorite David Lynch.
Oh, there you go. Next up, we have Scott Kahn as Tumblr. He
Scott
was
Kahn.
in he was in the Ocean's movies and Varsity Blues.
And it's James Caan's son, R.I.P.
Is it? I
Yeah.
was not aware. Okay. He's been in something else that we watched too, and I wonder if that was clarified for me and I've just forgotten.
Yeah, oh shit. What else was he
Already
on?
on already on the IMDb. Give me two shakes, I'll find it.
It's getting murky. Like I remember when we first started the podcast, it's like, yeah, we watched 3 movies and this person was in 1 or 2 of them. But at this point, I'm like, I know I've done him in housekeeping before, and I can't tell which one.
Oh, he was in Ready to Rumble. I know that's not what we're talking about, but that
Yeah,
movie's
no, the
fun.
only other Nick Cage movie he was in was Sunny, which we haven't talked about yet.
Oh, okay.
So I'm thinking that maybe he just came up last episode and we had this same exact conversation.
We've done this like 3 times already with different actors. We're like, where did we see this guy before? Oh no, we just talked about him last week.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. So moving on, we've got Will Patton as Atlee Jackson. Will Patton has been in a bunch of shit, including Armageddon, The Postman, The Mothman Prophecies, the most recent Halloween trilogy, and my favorite, The Punisher movie, the Thomas Jane one. And I have to call it out because this thing, I have to sit down and watch this TV series at some point because now it's starting to haunt me. He was also in the Numbers TV series where the E is a is a
Is a
3.
3. It speaks in leap. Yeah.
People who are in that TV series have some weird in on Nick Cage films. We run into it all the fucking time. Moving on, Timothy Oliphant as Detective Drycoff. He was in Justified, The Crazies, The Mandalorian, and Deadwood. You know who Timothy Oliphant is. Robert Duvall as Otto Hallowell. And you know who Robert Duvall is, but Apocalypse Now, The Godfather. He was in The Sixth Day, which I'll shout out because we've talked about The Sixth Day before, and the first Jack Reacher movie.
And The Apostle, where he goes absolutely apeshit with a baseball bat.
Then we have Delroy Lindo as Detective Roland Castleback.
Wait, are we talking about Robert Duvall and not mentioning The Godfather?
I mentioned The Godfather.
Yeah,
I zoned out.
Godfather got dropped, yeah.
I zoned out. I'm sorry, everybody. That was on
It's
me.
Tom Hagen. Come on.
I'm about to say, like, wait, what the fuck? We're not talking about Tom motherfucking Hagen over here?
No, right now we're talking about Delroy Lindo, who's in Get Shorty, The Core, Malcolm X, and more recently The Harder They Fall, which I actually enjoyed.
I only saw Malcolm X, and he was pretty good in it.
And then
Get Shorty's fun. That's one I would suggest to just about anyone.
Yeah, Get Shorty is good. And then we have Vinnie Jones as Sphinx, who has starred in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, Midnight Meat Train, and he was the Juggernaut, bitch.
He is, in my opinion, the crowning jewel of this movie.
He's pretty fantastic, and the scenes set him up very well. So I'm gonna wrap housekeeping unless
I got
somebody
one
yells at me.
more.
Yep.
David Lynch. We got Grace Zabritsky, who plays Laura Palmer's mom, Sarah Palmer, on the Twin Peaks TV series. I always got to shout out the Lynch alumni every time.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to throw out a couple of bit players who I really enjoyed, where I'm like, oh my God, it's that guy. Master P, the 90s rapper, was in this movie.
Yes, he was.
as the main adversary of Giovanni Ribisi.
Oh, also fucking Christopher Eccleston, one of the Doctors Who.
Yeah, and so is Michael Pena, who is, the guy currently in the MCU from Ant-Man, who just tells the stories really long-winded, who is like everybody's favorite character.
I call it out in the plot notes because I was like, is that fucking Michael Pena? And yeah, it is in a very funny scene.
I bet there's a ton more actors we could just keep naming because there's a lot of bit part stuff in this, which is great. There's also inexplicably the guy who plays Frank the Bunny in Donnie Darko's the dumb shit kid that can order pizzas.
Yeah, who's James Duvall, but spelled differently than Robert Duvall.
Yeah.
Who plays Freb. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, a bunch of the names of Kip's crew never sunk in. Freb being one of them, because it feels like they're like, what should we name this guy? I was like, I don't care. So I want to name him Freb then.
Yeah, and the only thing I saw him, I'm like, that's a dude from SLC Punk. That's fucking John the Mod or whatever his name was. He was a mod.
I haven't watched that movie
did a lot of
in a
acid.
long time. All right, but yeah, that wraps housekeeping, so we can jump right into the plot review. The opening, like, credits and everything have nice background music for a car movie. A lot of swiping text, like zooming across the screen, and roads and clocks and shit. Pretty solid. And then after it gets through like the stylized animated words and stuff, it opens on shots panning over items on a desk. It's like family photos and racing trophies and so on and so forth, until we see a Porsche dealership just before midnight on a Sunday. And three guys in a car driving by talking about one of the Porsches. It turns out it's the Porsche on display. And Kip, the driver of the car, gets out, opens the trunk of the car, and gets a brick,
which he refers to as his tool. He's like, I got to get my tool.
Yeah. And he opens the trunk, and there is one brick amongst all of the other shit in the trunk. And he takes it out and walks directly up to the glass doors of the dealership and smashes them open and proceeds to steal the car, driving it right through other glass doors. And then from that scene, we cut to a scene of a couple of guys talking in like a warehouse of some sort. And one of the gentlemen, Tumblr, is explaining the concept of a stranger. Now, I'm not 100% sure when the first reference to that act of self-love ended up in pop culture, but this has got to be close to the first, right?
I can't think of anything.
I'm curious enough. I'm gonna find out.
Okay, because that was one of the things where I was like, this might be the first reference in pop culture to The Stranger, but I also don't want to research
it
that.
may send you down a dark rabbit hole.
Yeah. So, but it's still relatively early for something like that. I don't think it was necessarily pervading the popular vernacular prior to that, but who knows? Regardless, we cut back to the stolen Porsche, and Kip like annoys somebody that he's at a stoplight with, and so they start racing down the street after the light turns green, and of course they blow by a cop at a traffic stop. The cop calls it in, and now Johnny Law is on the lookout for this Porsche. Kip and his crew deliver the Porsche to the warehouse where the other men in the stranger scene were talking. But unfortunately, the cops are hot on their tail, and the crew has to cut and run very quickly. They, get the keys out of the cars. They have like what looks to be like a list of cars written on one of the warehouse walls in reflective ink, and they have a black light set up on it. They try and wash some of it off, but not all of it. And then they grab the light and the rest of their gear and run, with the light smashing on the way out of the warehouse, the bulb breaking. I do want to point this out in that this is rather effective as a show don't tell scene and foreshadowing, right? They drop us right into the middle of something that's going on. You get a little sense of it, but when that light bulb breaks, you're like, shit, this is definitely going to clue the cops in at some point.
All right, I got a possible answer. I couldn't find any previous references to it before the year 2000, but it was either this or a film called Whipped, which sucks.
So it's got to be this, right?
It's probably this. They both came out in the same year. I don't know which was the first released, but it's one of those two.
This had to be more popular than the other film you referenced, because I've heard of this one, but I never heard of the one that you're talking about. So you heard it here first, folks. Gone in 60 Seconds invented The Stranger, and gifted that to young boys everywhere. Also, this is a PG-13 film. They knew exactly what the fuck they were doing there.
Touchstone wouldn't have let them go R. Touchstone is a property of Disney. You're not actually allowed to go R for Disney-related films.
Well, good. We're going to circle back around to that topic at a specific scene in this. So, two detectives arrive at the scene. This is Delroy and Oliphant, who obviously are primary characters in the film. We'll be seeing a fair amount of them. Castlebeck notices the remnants of the smashed black light bulb that the thieves broke on their way out, and collects it in a little evidence pouch. And then we cut to the next day, different scene, different character. This is our first shot of Nic Cage, and he's giving a speech about racing. And then the camera pans, and he's talking to a bunch of kids. And it looks like he manages in some capacity a go-kart track.
I think they say it at some point that he's managing just a gas station. But I guess maybe he just added this in or something. I'm not positive, because I think Giovanni Ribisi mentions that he's just a gas station manager at this point.
You're right, but the context in the scene that you're talking about is that he basically disappeared and Kip didn't know what he was doing. So It was like you're managing a gas station or something, which is close. I don't know what larger industry you lump in somebody who manages a go-kart track into, but gas station seems close enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a fun scene with Nic Cage, criticizing kids' go-kart driving abilities,
but not in an asshole way. It's in a
no.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's a fun scene. But unfortunately, Atlee, one of the men from the car heist the previous night, shows up at the go-kart track. Atlee and Cage, or Memphis, talk, and Atlee clues him in on how Kit screwed up this heist with the Porsche, and now he's in trouble. Apparently, there's some new big bad guy in town who's running the local crime crews, and what Kip screwed up was a big job for this guy, which is a no-no. And sure enough, the very next scene, we cut to Kip being handcuffed to the steering wheel of a vehicle that is then lifted by some heavy machinery. I don't know what it's called. It's a thing that picks up cars. Atlee and Cage go to the junkyard that all of this is happening at, and Memphis asks about his brother of the new bad guy in town, Kalitri, I believe it is. I refer to him as the Carpenter in a lot of this because that was apparently the bad guy's nickname, but they switched off using the Carpenter real quick and started throwing his name around. So bear with me as that gets resolved in my notes. But the bad guy also apparently is a big hobbyist woodworker.
Yeah, he mentions that he doesn't like metal because it's like cold and not alive or something.
Yeah, cold and dead, and wood is warm and from nature, some shit like that.
And we could make some obvious semi-homophobic jokes here, but dude loves wood.
Either way, so the Carpenter, after his speech about woodworking, sort of just avoiding Memphis's initial pointed question, finally gets down to talking business with him and explains that he hired Kip to do a job, paid him in advance and everything, and now he's fucked up. And so Memphis is like, yep, understood entirely. Here from me to you is the advance payment back. So, no harm, no foul. Whereas the bad guy's response is, if I don't deliver this makes me look like an asshole. Do I look like an asshole to you? And Cage replies, yeah, well, yeah, you look like an asshole, which is funny. It's a good scene. However, the Carpenter pulls a cover off of some object in the room, and it turns out he had just recently built a casket for the first time. The threat being clear, but he really has to drive the point home by taking Memphis outside to where the car Kip has been handcuffed in has been loaded into a car crusher, and they start to crush the car. Memphis reacts by hitting one of the goons, taking his gun and holding it up to the bad guy's face.
Very smoothly too. Like, I don't know if he was supposed to look that badass, but he looked badass.
He did. He looked. It was pretty slick maneuvering there. But the car crusher keeps going, and the bad guy gives Memphis a speech where, okay, yeah, you can kill me, but then your brother dies, and then you die too. You can agree to do the job and fix it for him, and then run, in which case I'll kill you both and your mom. Essentially meanders around to, you can take the job and do it successfully, and everything's square. So with that pitch, Memphis reluctantly agrees, and the job is to steal 50 high-end cars and deliver them by 8 a.m. 3 days from the time that they're having this conversation.
I'm looking at the list of cars. Some of these are not very high-end. Like, yeah, you have like some pretty cool pieces, but like then you also have like a Volvo V70R, which is a fucking Volkswagen. Or not a Volkswagen.
What year though? It might be a collector thing.
A 2000. A 2000
Oh yeah,
station wagon.
Jesus. Yeah.
They also want a 2000 GMC Yukon.
And the only cool car on that list is the Aston Martin DB1 from '62.
Yeah, I mean, like that car fucks. There's a few things on here, but then there's a Ford F350.
Yeah, no, wild. I'm not a big car guy, but I know that that's not wanted.
Is it
unless
expensive?
you work in? It might be expensive.
Ford. It's an F Series Ford. In the year 2000, it was like buying a minivan.
Yeah, it's pretty much just for people with landscaping businesses.
Yeah, like it's a work truck. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like you could just go to a dealership and buy one. It's not that big of a deal.
The implication is that this order is for buyers overseas. So
specifically a drug cartel. So I guess maybe they needed something for utility. I guess that sort of makes sense.
Like, remember those photos that were circulating on the internet of like Al-Qaeda using a former United States plumber's truck with a gun mounted in the back? So I don't know.
Yeah.
There might be some demand, but it is something that will likely come as no surprise to our listeners. I'm not a car guy. I'm not a sports guy. I'm not a gambler guy. So all of the movies in these various themes, I enjoy mainly just like an idiot. You know what I mean? Like it's all surface level. I'm like, oh, okay, cool cars. But the names mean absolutely nothing to me. So I feel like maybe they padded out that list specifically knowing they would be catering to some idiots like me. They're like, they don't know what a fucking good car is. Throw a throw a hatchback on there. They'll never notice.
I have no idea what a good car is, but I saw when they were like, it threw me off when they were in the suburbs and they just stole like the mom's SUV.
Yes, that is pretty good. And then they end up fucked for that.
Of course. However, we do get a pretty delightful scene right after this, Memphis agreeing to do this job, where they're back at Kip's, and Kip is making some food relatively ineptly. It doesn't look necessarily bad, but he does end up accidentally dumping like just too much salt in it because the cap comes off the salt shaker. And there's a very funny scene where Memphis takes a bite and immediately starts coughing because it's terrible and just goes, "It's good."
Yeah, clearly he pushed it away.
It's a good scene that pretty quickly sets up Kip's deal, where he's kind of a fuck up who idolizes and is trying to be his older brother, but is not nearly as competent at it. Maybe shades of Rumblefish a little bit there, but the movie doesn't have nearly as much to say about that dynamic comparatively.
Yeah, and but it's like it's a good setup though. I mean,
Classic
look,
trope.
but they do a good job of kind of setting up everything very neatly in like the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, the introductions of the characters are executed very, very well in this, in that you get the sense they want you to get very quickly without a bunch of exposition and bullshit. It's just set up, you're informed, now strap in.
And I think that putting a timer on something like this is always a good thing for screenwriting. It adds that amount of everybody's got to rush around. They got to do a million things. There's a lot of tension built up from that.
Yeah, and it cuts the fat off of your character setup. You know what I mean? Like you can really wander around fleshing out a character, but it's not always needed. And in an ensemble heist film, you need to be quick. The movie does a good job with that. But at this point, we cut to the detectives who go and jam up some guy who's working on the fishing docks about what he knows about these car thefts. The guy admits that he does know something, but only as to when the cars were supposed to be delivered. The detectives tell him he's got to get the name of the guy who ordered the job, with the promise that they'll come back and jam him up some more if he doesn't give over that information. Memphis, meanwhile, goes to visit his mom, who works in a diner. And despite his promises to Kip, Memphis tells his mom what's going on. He got in trouble with the stuff that Memphis used to do, and he can help him out of it so long as he breaks his promise to his mom and goes back to doing some of the shit that he used to do.
And she also has a Nic Cage connection. There's the dog. Yeah, Zero, go get him. This also has a Nic Cage connection where she is also in Wild at Heart.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I completely glossed over that during the housekeeping. Should have remembered. She plays Laura Dern's mom. She's crazy in that.
Very interesting. So when confronted with this, moral conflict, mom's like, do whatever you got to do, get him out of this. So in between this interaction with his mom at the diner, there's like a cop eating breakfast who recognizes Memphis like almost immediately, lending to the context that Memphis was a big deal car thief, in town, infamous to some level anyway. So this guy makes a call, and of course, as soon as Memphis exits the diner, our two detectives are there to question him. So there's a little back and forth because Castlebeck is convinced that Memphis has something to do with this string of car thefts, and that he's watching them and promises him if he, fucks anything up, he's definitely going to catch him and put him away. And this was also the first scene where I noticed that Timothy Olyphant has been a bit miscast, right? Because he's playing the sort of mouthy rookie detective, not necessarily that he's new to the job, but he's certainly less seasoned than Castlebeck, his partner. And so he's a little bit quicker to make a quip or a joke or a veiled threat that doesn't really land or isn't really smooth. It's another archetype of an archetype character that you've seen in a bunch of stuff. It just doesn't come off as super believable from Oliphant.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
the
works
main
much
cop.
better.
Sorry, the main cop is way more humorous. He has a nice little monologue in this scene where he's just like, when he first sees Memphis, he's like, Memphis, you're not going to believe this. I had somebody call me and say they just saw Memphis Reigns. I said, no, you didn't. He said, I bet you $200 I just saw Memphis Reigns. He says, okay, I'm going to take that bet. And then I have to come down here, find you, and now I'm out $200.
Yeah, no, the Castlebeck is a good character, and the dialogue is great. I feel like they explicitly wrote Oliphant's dialogue to act as a bit of a foil to Castlebeck's experience and cool approach to things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't play super well coming from Oliphant. This is very early in his career. He wasn't in anything notable.
He definitely
Really.
works better as a law enforcement that is slowly simmering towards a boil. That's usually the role that he kind of fills in like Justified, Deadwood to a certain extent because he starts out as a U.S. Marshal in that, and it's mostly about like his performances are normally about him just being a good guy who is gonna blow up at some point.
Yeah.
Or everything else I've seen him in has a level of baked in competence and swagger. Even when he's playing the good guy, it's restrained, but it's there. You know what I mean? So him playing the slightly unsure of himself or saying shit just to try and get, a nod or an accolade from some senior person, it doesn't play as believable. That might be a consequence of me having seen him in a bunch of other stuff, but I don't know. It is a little off-putting. It doesn't ruin the scenes or anything like that. It's just noticeable to me anyway.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
underutilized.
Yeah, I agree with that. So at this point, Memphis goes to visit an old associate of his, who he used to know when he was doing his crime stuff, a guy who ran a chop shop, but now it looks like he's running a legitimate body shop. And this is Otto, Robert Duvall's character.
And there's a great little Easter egg in this. When he first goes into the shop, there is a decal on a window of Woody Woodpecker, and it's the same pose that Nic Cage has tattooed on him of Woody the Woodpecker in Raising Arizona.
Huh, that's fun.
See, it's been years since I've seen Raising Arizona. I forgot about that little tidbit.
So Otto confirms for Memphis the rumors about this new bad guy, and also clues into the fact that Memphis has agreed to do this job to get his brother out of trouble. So Memphis went there with the hopes of recruiting Otto, but Otto's gone straight. He seems like he has a good life. And so Memphis sort of waffles on the decision to drag him into this. However, Otto says, no, I'm not going to leave you on your own on this. I'll help you make a couple of calls. And then we get a very, very fun scene where we're sort of going through a montage, the various people that they're trying to recruit for this scheme, and also solid character setup. So the first one that we get is a driving instructor of some sort who is his student is an Asian lady. It's a little stereotypical here.
It's very stereotypical. She's Asian. She's a lady.
And bad at driving.
And very bad at driving. Also, we should shout out, I love like these heist introductions. Like Ocean's 11 did it really well too, where you have all these characters you have to jam pack in really quickly.
Yeah.
So I always like a scene like this.
Yeah, and they're all doing something very, very key to their character. By the way, the driving instructor is played by Chi McBride, whose character's name is Donnie. We didn't cover him in housekeeping. Very sorry, Mr. McBride, but he's been in a bunch of things that you've seen as well.
Yeah,
The Terminal, iRobot. I'm pretty sure he was the captain in the 21 Jump Street remake. No, you're right.
No, that
I'm
was
sorry.
Ron Swanson.
No. Yeah, but somebody else entirely. I'm sorry. He was an undercover brother. That's
yes, he wasn't
undercover
brother.
Up.
He was also the principal in Boston Public.
Okay. Jesus. I don't know how I mixed that up, but yeah, I knew he played a chief in some sort of enforcement agency, but those are two very different movies. Anyway, so he tells his student how bad she is at driving, and she immediately starts crying very dramatically. And he gets this phone call from Memphis, and he's basically like, "You son of a bitch, I'm in." Immediately gets out of the car and is like, "Take it around the block." And she, of course, backs out directly into traffic and hits somebody like immediately. And then we get a montage of Memphis and Otto calling all of these old associates. It's very funny. A lot of it's rapid fire, like somebody's yelling at Nic Cage and he's like, I don't want to tell you who I am now. There's another one where somebody that they got on the phone is clearly in the middle of having sex and they're like, "You're really busy now, I'll call you back." And then one of the last calls that we get is to apparently a mute mortician, like somebody working with dead bodies in like a hospital setting, and he takes a half a sandwich, takes a bite, rests it on the dead body in front of him when he hears that there's somebody on the phone for him. He goes and answers the phone, and it's Memphis, and he's like, "Sphinx, if it's you, press a button." Presses a button. So
I like to have the I have an internal logic that's the same character as Midnight Meat Train.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it's a bizarre but funny scene, and it sets up Sphinx very well as sort of like a prologue to what I consider his true introduction, which is just a little bit after this. So,
right, but Josh, before we get
Mhm.
into that, you know what time it is?
What time is it?
It's time to talk about our Patreon, because we need to have Ryan play G-Force the video game, and not just play it, but speed run it. And not just speed run it so well that he takes the world record away from Chris Gamer, who at this point I feel like I know better than lots of my own family.
I want it so bad. I want to do this, and then I want to have Chris Gamer on the podcast.
I want to crush Chris Gamer. I'm going to destroy him.
I want to have a best of 7 series between Ryan and Chris Gamer once this happens. We've gone off the rails already talking about Chris Gamer because we're coming for you, Chris. Patreon.com/Nic Cage Fight. The $3 tier, which is like the cheapest tier, is now going to have every episode uploaded without this little ad section, so you can enjoy that, as well as everything else where we are going to live stream movies, do live watches, as well as all of the Patreon content of watching Nic Cage adjacent movies and media. We were going to watch The Wrestler, and now I think we're going to watch Gone in 60 Seconds, the original, because
I thought we were doing Bad Lieutenant. Come on.
we're doing bad. Listen, there's so many things. There's Bad Lieutenant. There's Gone in 60 Seconds.
We can double feature Bad Lieutenant in 60 Gone in 60 Seconds. We'll do
That's
this.
not a bad
might
idea.
actually
I like
be
that, actually.
That might be a really good double feature. It's like a really, one's a really character heavy piece, and then one is just fast cars.
Yeah, that's spectacle versus introspection.
Yeah, that would work out really well. So you should listen to that if you like us, or if you don't like us, if you hate us.
So subscribe to our Patreon if you hate me specifically.
Yeah, if you if you want us to die, give us $3 a month.
Vote for my pain with your money.
Nothing would stick it to us more. Trust me. So the last person on the list is Sway, Angelina Jolie's character, and Memphis Danes.
Wait, that's just how you're going to transition back from ads? That's just going to get right back into it. This is just a transition. Okay,
jump
fine.
right in.
Sway, I'm ready for it. Bad transition. It's a bad transition, but I'm
sorry.
here for it. Let's just go.
Look,
Sway.
I'll segue better next time. I promise.
You got to sway into it.
Ooh.
You see, it was right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, you guys are supposed to back me up. What am I supposed to do? Sway.
You're the leader of this podcast, Josh. I don't know if you know this, but you are.
I didn't.
Without you, this whole thing falls apart. You think me and Brian can do this? We can't.
Yes.
You're a fearless generalissimo.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment, and so now I'm just going to plow ahead with Sway.
You and Mussolini are the same person.
Oh, there you go. That's yeah. Find us on social media. Tell us what you think about that comment. If you want to hate subscribers, I think you're doing it right. So Memphis deigns to go and try and recruit Sway in person. It becomes clear why a little bit later on, but at the start, it just seems like a plot device. It turns out Sway is working 2 separate jobs, one in a body shop and one as a bartender. And Memphis follows her from the one place of work to the other. She's relatively standoffish with him in general. When he first sees her, she's working at the body shop. She basically ignores him and says she's got to get to her second job. So Memphis ends up in the bar that she's working at. And essentially, after proposing the heist and seeing if she wants in, she, basically is non-committal about it. So Memphis goes to leave, not wanting to, and then reinforcing the point that he started with Otto, not wanting to screw up anybody's normal life if they're not 100% committed. But when he leaves the bar, he's confronted by another gangster that he apparently had screwed over with some of his criminal activities in the past. They're pretty upset about this, and he gets jumped by this crew. Until, out of nowhere, the gangster's car window gets smashed by Sphinx, who has shown up and is wielding a metal pipe, who then proceeds to blow up the gangster's car with a rag in the gas tank and goes and almost single-handedly beats up the entire gang. They make the point pretty clear. Sphinx is terrifying.
It's glorious
For a lot of reasons. It's an awesome scene.
It's such a perfect actual introduction for the character, because you're not really seeing what he's capable of in the morgue scene, but you know what that man's gonna do for the rest of the movie after this.
Oh yeah,
oh
no,
yeah.
The morgue scene is like, okay, he's mute and creepy, not bothered by dead bodies or anything like that. And then the very next scene, he single-handedly is tackling inner city crime, vigilante style.
He's a svelte Silent Bob.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's a hard comparison to make there.
I don't know. It's definitely Silent Bob-esque by the end of this.
All right. We'll talk about our different comparisons when we get to that point. So Memphis has now been saved from this altercation, and we cut to a conversation between Kip and Memphis back at Kip's place. And they talk about, well, Memphis sort of clarifies that when he was stealing cars, it really wasn't about making money. It was about the cars and the thrill, really. And
I'm sure the money helped.
Yeah, I'm fucking sure. But, you got to get all lofty with this shit when you have a good guy, bad guy. You know what I mean? A good guy criminal, an anti-hero of some sort. Yeah, you have to play off that it's a lucrative proposition. And Memphis tries to emphasize this point by basically saying when the realities of a criminal life set in, that's when he decided to get out of it. When people were getting shot at, when his friends were getting in trouble, so on and so forth. That's when he decided to stop and leave. And now we cut back to the detectives who have picked up on another lead. It turns out some of the Mercedes that were stolen in the initial attempt at this heist, supervised by Kip, they had gotten the keys, replica keys made, and there's only a select number of ways they could have done so.
Yeah, I guess it can't be hot wired or something, I think was the reason they said that they needed the laser cut keys.
Yeah, it has some electronic component that's tied to it. It's not just a simple
I'm wondering if this is late enough for it to be an RFID chip like cars have nowadays.
They gloss over a lot of the tech in this film. It probably
which is good
is.
Because I'm stupid, and
yeah, they don't really.
Okay, you need the keys. That's enough for me.
Yeah, like the electronics guy later in the movie, he's just got a little box that shows some numbers on it, and then a door opens. You don't really need to explain that. Some numbers showed up.
No,
yeah, I get it.
I'm not gonna lie, I love this approach. I'm a big fan of sci-fi and stuff, and when you get to in the weeds with the hard sci-fi, this is how the fake science would work, I get so fucking bored.
Give me that. Tell me about how
shit.
Dyson spheres work all day, baby.
No, I do not need that. All I need to know is that lightsaber goes whoosh.
yeah. I honestly I am fine with that. It extends to a certain extent with tech, but there's a fine line, right? When you show hacking as navigating a cityscape, but all of the buildings are made of numbers, that's too bullshit for me. But if you're just oh yeah, we use this tech and it unlocks this door, I'm like, fine, perfect. It makes sense. You're not
a big Lawnmower Man fan, huh?
Hey, well, I don't dislike that, but it's I was thinking primarily of hackers. the movie Hackers, which is a movie I like.
I
But
love that movie.
Yeah,
It
we're
rules.
according to the main villain, everybody's password is God.
But yeah, the hacking scenes, the visualization of hacking was absurd. Anyway, but yeah, so they gloss over the tech of it, but basically these keys could have only come from somebody who had a direct line to the Mercedes headquarters in Germany or some shit. So they find somebody that's working for a local dealership that has a rap sheet that's loosely connected with Kip and his crew. So boom, has to be somebody that the guy that's helping them. So they track him down and I believe show up at his place of work, but we cut very quickly from there to Otto's shop where Kip's crew sort of storms in on the newly reformed Memphis crew and is like, we got to combine forces. And Memphis's crew is like, no, we can't. You fucked it up already. And they're like, no, you have to. You don't have enough people. You got to do this in a short period of time. And Otto plays peacemaker and is like, yeah, no, we kind of need the dipshit crew to combine with the old head crew to make a new sort of super Voltron crew, which
is not wrong.
Yeah, no, and everybody agrees to it. I mean, it's obvious, like this is where we had to be, because that's how you get the most fun mashups. You get the old heads and the new heads working together and their styles clash and it's fun, right?
Yeah, that's how it's got to go.
Yeah. So we cut immediately back to the detectives who are strong arming the guy who gave it the keys, and he tells them that some boxer looking kid offered him $500 per key, and that's about it. And the detectives are like, if he calls you again, let us know.
And also, so that is something that I'm happy they did, because as soon as they said like boxer looking kid, I was half expecting for his like 2 scenes to go by, and then they see Scott Conn and they're just like, he's built like a boxer and must be him. And I'm happy it didn't go in that direction. That is just like, you gave us nothing. Just tell us if he shows up again.
Yeah. So I do want to pause here for just a moment to point out, I thought crime paid better, or maybe our expectations, maybe it was like the Dr. Evil being frozen for too long thing where he thinks $1 million is a ton of money. But in the year 2000, you could have people steal 50 cars for $200,000. The fucking profit margin for the big bad guy has to be amazing. The Shelby alone was like what, $80,000 damaged?
Don't know cars.
Like
I don't
that.
either. I feel like 50 cars are worth more than 200 grand though.
Shit, am I gonna have to do some math in the background?
I'll
pull up a
please.
Kelly Blue Book for like 2000.
Look, as somebody who's got burned by looking into the rules of a Nic Cage movie in the past, it'll haunt you. It'll keep you up at night. Don't do it.
It's not worth it. You are correct. It's not worth it. You're going to get into some next territory.
But in all seriousness,
while I go start a Google doc.
The values here seem very low. $200,000 for the stealing 50 cars job, which is not enough to split amongst all of the people they need to make this happen. But also $500 per key to a Mercedes. That there's only a couple of like the risk to reward ratio here is low, in my opinion, especially when you do the math and realize that this guy who's getting shaken down by the detectives found himself in this situation for $1,500 and B made a total of $3,000 and that's it. I don't know. I wouldn't risk my job for $3,000 in such an obvious fashion, but hey,
that's you and you're not a criminal.
Yeah. It's a shame. Probably make more money that way, but not working for these guys. So back to Otto's for the planning session. They start trying to track down where a copy of all these 50 cars on the list could be. Top tier for me, I think this is the qualifier for the unhinged Nic Cage scene in the film. Cage pretending to be an obnoxious rich guy at a dealership to find the location for one of the cars. It's awesome. It's really good. Absolutely hilarious. He's just like he plays the snobby rich guy perfectly. Has some shades of the attitude from Vampire's Kiss. That's what it reminded me of.
Absolutely, I was getting that too, especially when he's like, what else you got in the warehouse, buddy?
Well, see, that's the scene where he breaks character, right? Because he's almost I felt during the scene he was fighting to not slip into the Vampire's Kiss accent.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like, yeah, if I was driving one of those, champagne would just rain from the sky. And at the end, after the guy's like, oh, yeah, I have that in the warehouse. He's like, what else do you have in the warehouse? He cuts right back. No affectation on the delivery at that point. But the rest of it is solid gold. It's really funny.
He's just like, so these yuppie assholes are coming out of Starbucks. And I'm just like, you know what would make me like one of these? It's just like, I can't do it justice.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's great for establishing the theme that cars equal sex in this universe.
That is also good, but there is a much more ham-fisted scene that drives this home later in the film.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, they say it straight up out loud later.
Oh yeah, they shout it in your face. But Rich, the part that you're talking about is like the salesman is trying to sell him on this one car, and he's like, yeah, I know, I saw 3 of these parked outside of a Starbucks the other afternoon. You know what that tells me? It tells me this is what I would get if I wanted to look like a poser. Now if I showed up in insert one of the list of 50 cars here, what would I look like? And he's like, a connoisseur. And he's like, exactly. So it's well set up, well written, well acted, very unhinged, solid fun from Cage here. But there you go, they get the location of at least one, if not several cars from this little ruse. And then of course Tumblr goes right back to the key guy from the first job, and he is able to inform the detectives at this point, which does another bit of show not tell with establishing Castlebeck as savvier than your average detective, because they don't bust Tumblr then and lean on him to give him all the details of what's going on. They set up a plan to follow Tumblr and also potentially scope out Mercedes vehicles specifically that these keys were made for. So solid setup all the way around. And now I don't know, what do you guys think? Is that a good cliffhanger?
I
think so.
I think so. I was going to ask this question because we brought up Next a little bit. How many Patreon subscribers would it take for you to watch Next on a 12-hour loop?
All right. Ryan wanted 11 more to break a world record, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a children's game world record.
True, but still, don't undersell yourself, man. If we get 20 Patreon subscribers, I will watch Next.
Gotta live stream it.
That goes without saying.
Like I'm trying to think of how we can set this up. I could watch Next once a week and keep a Next journal where I describe what this is doing to my brain. I don't know if 20 subscribers is honestly enough.
I don't know if that's enough either.
No. I want one shot on a loop. It ends and it begins again.
For how long? How long do I have to do
I think
this?
12 hours. I think 12 hours. 12 hours should be 6, 7, 8, probably 9 watches, because it's about an hour and a half, isn't it?
Something
or was
like
it
that.
longer?
I don't know.
All
Felt
right.
like a million hours.
If we get it, yeah, it felt like a million hours. If we get 20 Patreon subscribers, I will watch a 12-hour loop of Next, and I will chronicle in text what this does to me and how I'm feeling.
96
I'll fucking
minutes.
live tweet it. I'll live tweet it, and yeah, I don't know, but 20 Patreon subscribers, and I will watch 12 hours worth of Next. I'll commit to that.
Yeah, I think that's a good number. I think by like the third watch, not the third, I think by the fourth watch, you'll be immune.
I don't think so. That movie was designed by top scientists to specifically piss me off. Yeah. Also throw in just again, specifically since it's for Patreon subscribers, and you know, if I live tweet it, everybody gets to enjoy that. What I'll do is Rich, directly after the 12-hour loop, we can all hop on and you can read me positive reviews of Next and see if I manage to keep from having an aneurysm.
Yeah, I would enjoy that.
You can collect your favorite positive glowing reviews of that dog shit movie and make me listen to them and react to them after watching nothing but that movie for 12 hours.
Yeah,
the
that's what I'm
cruelty is
going to
the
do.
point.
It's going to be like the Malcolm in the Middle episode where at the end I just cough blood.
I feel like I need to do something at the because it's like we have Ryan playing G-Force, you watching next. I gotta figure something out like in the next 10 minutes before we start recording our next episode.
Well, hold on. We can take some time. This has to be it has to be impactful. We're upping the stakes here. Now, Ryan put some of his mental sanity on the table to try and generate interest. And I feel like I one-upped him because I don't think that Ryan has a visceral hatred of G-Force or video games. But I
hated G-Force. I think I could rewatch Next. G-Force bored me to death, which is the worst thing a movie can do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Next actively made me furious. I couldn't enjoy any part of it. But either way, we have some time. You can think on it, Rich. I don't want you to jump the gun when we could really devise something that could push you to your breaking point.
Yeah, because I'm not seeing a whole lot. Like what could get me there is like watching like USS Indianapolis, but you cut out the sharks in the middle and put that on a loop for like
no Sizemore either.
Without Sizemore,
no sharks.
The sizeless edition.
And loop it for 24 hours.
I don't know. Hold on. We're all gonna think on this because I think we can come up with something more insidious. I have a couple of ideas, but we will brainstorm off air for that. In the meantime, I'm gonna have fun pitching options for us to do that.
And real quick, that's patreon.com/Nic Cage fight. $3. My brain is mush. The $3 tier is where you can listen to us without ads. Yeah, Ryan saw my eyes glaze over as I'm trying to find words.
$3 ad-free, $5 fresh episodes on the Patreon. Anything higher than that, it's all streaming, baby.
Ryan, you're a good pitch man.
Also, you can follow us on Twitter while that's still a thing and accessible for free at cagefight_pod. Feel free to yell at us about your opinions about movies or yell at us for our opinions about movies or really anything. If you have a bad day at work, unload on us like we were your boss. We will respond.
Yeah, I mean, I check it a lot, like more than I should.
Yeah. Is that all our plugs? Is that everything we need to plug?
I think we've plugged all the plugs.
Yeah, I mean, we got like a Facebook, but like, again, it's only for uncles. Like,
if you're not an uncle, don't follow us. Anybody that's liked us on Facebook and isn't an uncle, you are in breach of contract.
Yeah. It's only for uncles. So, make sure you have, your child in order that's not yours, but is a family member's.
There you go. All right. That's going to do it for us for now. Tune back in next time for the second half of Gone in 60 Seconds. And as always, listener, we appreciate you. Zero does too.